We're going to start looking at this build plan I'm putting together. I'm actually using the Gen 8 Plus or Gen 8.5 gearbox. So that's the EMERBU one. So it does have a little different dimensions, I think I've told you, though they look almost identical. The inside of the receivers are slightly different sizes, and I've run into that before where I had to switch back to a regular Gen 8 because it didn't fit. But anyway, thought I'd go through, show you everything I've done. With my 3D printer that I have now, it's so fast, I can do a lot more experimenting, kind of prototyping, and it really allows me to do a lot of cool customizing that I couldn't initially do. And just, I think as I've gotten better with it and learned how to kind of do my hack at modeling, which is a lot of modifying, resizing, cutting and slicing in software, and and then stacking things within a slicer for printing purposes so they all print together. It's turned out really good. So let's go ahead and show you kind of what we got started with. First off, you can see I'm doing like a little 14-degree drop stock over there. So the buffer tube is going to attach right there. So what I've done typically when I've done these is I end up putting, let me pull this off here, a rivet nut right down in the middle in there. And then that rivet nut, I'm just going to actually take this all apart to show that better. That rivet nut is kind of glued in and then also secured in more with plastic from a 3D printed pen, right? So that is where you're going to latch on. You're just going to go ahead, I'll put a bolt right through here, and that's what's going to stick on there. Okay, now also a lot of times I'm able to then put a second smaller rivet nut down here, and that's what'll keep that straight. Well, in this case, because the way the stock drops and where that one would come out, it would kind of block the wiring. So I wanted to figure out a way to kind of maintain everything being straight without putting a second rivet nut in there. So what I'm going to do is I printed these small pieces, and hopefully I can pop them off now because they're on here pretty tight. Okay, got that. And then this piece, which I needed some little filler pieces because this was slightly too long anyway. There was a little bit of a gap there, right? So I wanted to fill that gap anyway. So now I've got these two pieces here, and I cut them in half. I cut it in half on purpose because what I'll do is I'm going to mount each to 1/2, right? And I'm going to go ahead and probably glue and screw to the actual receiver because these pieces will be able to stay on here, right? And you'll still be able to take it apart without any issue to service anything. Okay, so that's what's going to happen there. And then of course this will slide on like it's supposed to. You've got those two notches, and then the bolt will go right through there. So that was just a new plan to try to make it more secure, and I think it'll work really nice. And again, it'll keep everything nice and straight. And if I screw this, it will just be, super short little screws that aren't going to protrude much, or even little, there's enough room for a little bolt, so I might recess in tiny little like M3 bolts and put the nuts on this side just so that stays in there nice and tight, and do like one here, one towards the top. But that way that should help with that. Otherwise on the receiver, just thought I'd go with a different mag release. I think it looks kind of cool. These still all need to get sanded and cleaned up too. On the charging handle, there's this little piece. I guess this is from Call of Duty. You see that a lot. This replaces this trigger. So that'll go in there. And then you'll have that right there instead for your charging, right? The stock itself, which kind of came apart while I was pulling it. So this is just a shortened version of a cool stock that I found, because I wanted to make it a little smaller, because this is going to be more of a CQB style. So you can see it's in multiple pieces, which nice thing about that is if you have smaller printers, you can print it all on there. But also it's going to allow me to do some different color paints without making it too difficult there. To hold it in place, rivet nut again, and this is the size bolt. Obviously this one's too long, but that's the right size threads. And I just use that. And then basically I bury the head of the bolt into a nice kind of piece like this, stippled piece, and then that goes in there nice. And then we've got kind of that stippling repeated right there to just cover the threads of the buffer tube, which isn't necessary. I just thought it looked nice. Looking at the barrel itself, okay, or the handguard, you can see, right, I decided to print my Gel Ball Blaster Master on the actual handguard because I found that when I'm printing letters standing up, they print nicer, but rails don't print as nice, so I try to always print my rails separately, laying down flat, and then I can also do different colors with them. See here, the attachment, so it goes ahead and it just fits on just like the standard handguard does. And then what's going to happen is I do have to cut this slightly right here, and there'll be this piece then that actually kind of, you know, mounts everything off, and then this piece is actually, you know, the amplifier. Now this one's really fat, so I don't know if I like it or not. We'll see after I get it all painted out. I might change that up. But also I made it so that this piece can pop off, and then I can paint that separately too. So this piece can actually come off of here. I'll paint that a separate color. All right, and then we've got the different rails. So we'll have a side rail here, a side rail up front here. There's going to be a top rail, which I switched up. So you got your top rail like that, because I thought that would look cool. And then your bottom rail is a full rail, and that's where this piece, this grip is going to go. So that would fit on there just basically. Very nice. And up top, just to connect it, I like having little risers, but I didn't want a giant riser on this. And, you know, this just adds stability, and I do think it looks cool. So up top, you've got this little riser, and it's just going to overlap a little bit for the rail to grab onto, you know, right here. So, all right, so that was a pretty in-depth, actually, run through of everything I'm going to do, and kind of talking more about the 3D printed parts and how I came up with them and what I did. Comments or questions, let me know what you think. Of course, check back once we get it all put together. I'll show it to you and paint it nicely. And then, of course, we'll do that demo with FPS. So please like, subscribe, share my channel with your friends, and participate in the monthly giveaways. Thanks.